the trap of trying to quit. Most people don't fail to quit drinking because they can't stop. They fail because they do it wrong. They follow advice that sounds logical, looks responsible, even feels productive, but actually keeps them trapped. Because when it comes to quitting alcohol, there's a kind of reverse psychology at play. The harder you try to quit, the more your brain resists letting go. So in this video, I want to show you something different. The 6 things you must never do when quitting alcohol if you want it to actually work. Some of these might sound harmless, some might even sound helpful, but every one of them will quietly sabotage your progress. And if you stay until the end, you'll see how all 6 are connected by one hidden lie. The lie that makes quitting feel like a fight instead of a release. Let's start with the biggest one, the mistake almost everyone makes on day 1. 1. Don't make quitting about willpower. Everyone says, just be strong, stay disciplined, push through the cravings. And sure, it sounds good, but here's the problem. Willpower runs out. It's a finite resource. The more you use it, the weaker it gets. That's why you can resist for a few days, maybe a few weeks, then suddenly collapse and tell yourself, see, I'm weak. You're not weak. You're just human. Because quitting alcohol isn't a test of strength. It's a shift in perception. Think of it like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a while, but eventually your arms get tired and the ball bursts to the surface. That's what willpower is. Temporary control. What you actually need is understanding. Once you see alcohol for what it truly is, a depressant that tricks your brain into chasing the very anxiety it creates, you stop needing to hold the ball down at all. You just let go. That's how freedom begins. And that freedom only grows when you avoid the second mistake, the one that destroys almost every early attempt. 2. Don't cut back gradually. Most people think tapering off is safer, that quitting slowly is the responsible way. But the truth is, gradual quitting rarely works, because you can't break an addictive cycle by continuing it. You're trying to heal from the poison while still drinking the poison. Each just one keeps your brain's reward system trapped in the same loop. The craving never ends because the supply never stops. And here's what makes it worse. Every time you cut back, your brain starts tracking the next drink even more obsessively. You spend all day thinking about it, bargaining with yourself, but that's not recovery. That's mental torture. True change doesn't come from moderation. It comes from clarity. The moment you decide, I don't drink anymore, your brain stops negotiating. The addiction loses its leverage. That's why people who quit cleanly, once and for all, recover faster, while those who taper tend to loop in self-doubt for months, because every sip keeps the illusion alive. And that illusion becomes even stronger if you fall into the third trap, one that almost everyone falls for in the first few weeks. 3. Don't replace alcohol with another crutch. This one's sneaky. You quit drinking, but suddenly you're chain-eating sugar, or vaping, or scrolling social media, or drinking 6 cups of coffee a day. It feels harmless because it's not alcohol, but it's the same pattern, distraction instead of regulation. When you drink, your brain gets dopamine spikes on demand. Remove alcohol, and your brain looks for substitutes. If you don't understand this, you'll end up building a new dependence in the shape of your old one. And sure, sugar won't destroy your life like alcohol does, but it will keep your brain wired for escape. The real goal isn't to replace one reward with another. It's to retrain your mind to create calm without needing external stimulation. That's where true emotional stability comes from. Not another hit, but the absence of the need for one. And when you start mastering that, you begin seeing through another dangerous illusion, the idea that you can handle it alone. 4. Don't isolate yourself. When you quit, your brain wants quiet. You might say, I just need space. I'll figure this out on my own. Isolation is exactly what addiction feeds on. See, alcohol disconnects you, not just from others, but from yourself. When you isolate, you strengthen that same disconnection. You need people, not to fix you, but to mirror back who you actually are without the fog. And no, this doesn't mean traditional meetings, if that's not your thing. It just means surrounding yourself with truth, real conversations, real connection, real accountability, because isolation is where the old voice comes back. The one that whispers, "No one will know. Just one drink." Connection is the antidote to that voice. It's how you remind your brain that you're no longer fighting alone. But as you build that support, there's another thing to watch for. A more subtle trap disguised as optimism. 5. Don't expect instant happiness. This one hurts, but it's crucial. When you quit alcohol, you don't wake up the next day filled with sunshine and self-love. You wake up raw. You feel emotions you've been avoiding for years: shame, regret, anxiety. It's tempting to think, wait, I thought this was supposed to feel good. And when it doesn't, people panic and relapse. But here's the truth. Those emotions aren't setbacks. They're detox. You're not broken, you're rebalancing. For years, alcohol has been silencing your emotional system. Now that it's coming back online, you're finally processing what's been stored. This stage is where most people give up. Not because it's too hard, but because they mistake healing for failure. But if you stay through that discomfort, if you breathe through it instead of running from it, something extraordinary happens next. You start to feel real peace. And when you feel that peace, you realize something else. Something most people never notice. 6. Don't keep calling yourself an alcoholic. This one might trigger some people, but hear me out. If the label helps you find community or language, that's fine. If it becomes your identity, it can keep you stuck. Because every time you say, "I'm an alcoholic," you're reinforcing the belief that alcohol still defines you. That identity tells your brain, "This is who I am. I'm just managing it." But freedom doesn't come from management. It comes from transformation. You are not your past behavior. You're not a broken version of yourself trying to survive. You're a healthy person, remembering what it feels like to live naturally. That's the mindset that ends the struggle. Because if you keep identifying with the problem, your subconscious will keep trying to solve it, even when there's nothing left to fix. Drop the label, drop the guilt, keep the lessons. That's where real recovery begins. The thread, what all 6 mistakes have in common. Let's tie this together. Every one of these 6 mistakes, relying on willpower, tapering off, swapping addictions, isolating, expecting instant bliss, and clinging to labels, they all come from the same lie. The belief that you need alcohol to feel whole, that without it, you're missing something, that the sober version of you is less. But here's the reality. Alcohol never completed you. It just distracted you from noticing that you already were. When you remove alcohol, you don't become weaker. You become raw, clear, unfiltered, which at first feels uncomfortable, but then becomes your greatest power. Because what's left after alcohol isn't emptiness. It's truth, and truth doesn't need escape. That's the point where everything changes. The shift, the day it finally clicks. At some point in your journey, there's a moment that hits like lightning. You wake up one morning and realize you're not trying anymore. You're not counting days. You're not craving. You're not negotiating. You're just done. That's the day alcohol loses all its power. Not because you forced yourself to stop, but because you finally saw it clearly enough that you didn't want it anymore. That's the secret of effortless sobriety. Clarity, not control. And once that clarity clicks, life opens up in a way you couldn't imagine. You start sleeping deeply, laughing freely, creating, connecting, existing, without needing anything to make it bearable. That's when quitting stops being about survival and starts being about evolution. But once you reach that place, something else happens. Something you'll notice in others before you ever see it in yourself. The cost of waiting. When you finally start seeing the truth about alcohol, it's easy to think the hard part is over. There's something I need you to understand. The longer you wait to act on that truth, the harder it gets to escape. Because every year you keep drinking, your brain builds deeper pathways around alcohol. Your identity starts to form around it. Your routines, your relationships, even your confidence, they all quietly bend toward it until it feels like part of who you are. And that's why, for so many people, quitting doesn't just feel hard. It feels impossible, not because they're broken, but because they waited too long to see what was really happening. Every year, the mind becomes more efficient at defending the habit. It finds better excuses, smarter justifications, more convincing reasons to delay until one day they're not choosing alcohol anymore. Alcohol is choosing for them. And that's what makes this moment so important. If you've seen yourself in anything I've said today, this is your signal to stop waiting. Because the truth is, quitting doesn't get easier with time. It only gets harder to remember who you were before the bottle started defining you. So if you're ready to understand why that happens, if you want to see what alcohol is really doing to your brain every year you keep drinking, click the video on the screen now. Because once you see how fast the trap tightens, you'll never let another year slip by again.